ever just like grab some random painkiller for a headache without thinking twice?
Oh, yeah.
We've all been there, right?
Absolutely.
But what if I told you something as common as codeine, like just sitting there in your medicine cabinet? Could be a lot riskier than we think.
Hmm.
Like way riskier.
Right.
So today we're doing a deep dive into this opioid codeine, which seems really mild on the surface, right?
Mm.
And we're going to uncover those hidden dangers.
You're right to question that mild label because codeine really does often fly under the radar.
Yeah.
People assume it's less intense than other opioids.
Right.
And what makes it even trickier is it's often just tucked away in combination medications.
Mm-hmm.
People might not even realize they're taking it,
Oh, wow.
let alone the potential for, a rough ride if they become dependent on it.
So it's like codeine is like sneaking in a way.
Yeah.
What makes it so tricky?
Well, one of the things is the way that it interacts with the brain.
Okay.
It basically, it mimics the actions of our brain's natural painkillers,
Oh, wow.
endorphins.
Okay.
So when someone takes codeine, the brain thinks it's encountered this, surge of endorphins, which then triggers that cascade of, pain relief, that good feeling,
Got
maybe even euphoria.
Okay, so the brain gets flooded with these like feel-good signals.
Yeah.
But then what happens? Because I mean, there's got to be a catch.
Yeah, you're catching on. Because the brain is so adaptable,
Right.
when it senses this, constant influx of what it thinks are endorphins, thanks to the codeine,
Right.
it starts to adjust. Think of it like turning up the volume when you're on a noisy street.
Okay.
Eventually, your brain just kind of tunes out the sound.
Right.
And so in this case, the brain's becoming less responsive to those endorphin signals, meaning a person would need higher and higher doses of codeine to get that same relief or, feeling. That's that slippery slope of tolerance building
Yeah.
and ultimately dependence.
So I'm starting to see how this mild opioid might not be so mild,
Yeah.
especially if the brain is constantly trying to readjust to what it's taking in.
Right.
Is that part of why codeine dependence can be so powerful?
It's a huge factor. And, what's more, the research shows that codeine can actually trigger physical dependence much faster than some other drugs, which is a surprise to a lot of people.
Oh, wow.
We're talking a matter of weeks, sometimes even less.
Wow. That's a lot faster than I would thought.
Yeah.
And to be clear, we're not just talking about physical dependence.
Right.
This isn't craving your morning coffee.
A whole other thing. This
Yeah.
is rewiring how the brain functions on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
This isn't a temporary change,
Right.
Long-term codeine use can have a really profound impact on the actual structure and function of brain cells,
Wow.
especially those responsible for regulating essential bodily functions, mood, sleep cycle, even things like breathing and heart rate.
Yeah.
These changes are what contribute to those very real and sometimes severe withdrawal symptoms that can pop up when someone tries to stop taking codeine.
And when we talk about those withdrawal symptoms,
It's not just about craving the drug.
Right.
This research is painting this really intense picture
yeah,
of how codeine withdrawal hits you on multiple levels,
Yeah.
body and mind.
it's a really common misconception, actually, that codeine withdrawal is mild,
Right.
but it could be just as severe as withdrawal from other opioids.
Wow.
We're talking a whole bunch of symptoms ranging from uncomfortable to really debilitating.
So let's break down these symptoms.
Okay.
Because it sounds like,
Yeah.
codeine withdrawal just throws everything out of whack.
It really does. On the
Yeah.
physical side,
Right.
you've got your classic flu-like symptoms, but in overdrive.
Oh, no.
Nausea and vomiting so intense that you can barely keep
wow.
anything down.
Oh, go.
Stomach cramps that feel like someone is wringing out your
Oh,
insides.
my gosh.
Headaches that just won't quit.
Ugh.
And then chills, you just want to burrow under a mountain of blankets, even in summer.
Yeah.
And then on top of that,
Wow.
your heart is racing, even when you're lying still.
Yeah.
And your muscles ache like you just ran a marathon.
So basically every system in your body is staging a revolt.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
But what's often overlooked is the mental and emotional fallout
Okay.
of codeine withdrawal,
Okay.
which could be even more overwhelming.
Wow. You're really driving home the point that this isn't just physical discomfort.
It's a lot, yeah.
We're talking about really serious psychological effects.
Absolutely. Imagine cravings so intense they consume your every thought, and then coupled with a brain fog that makes it impossible to even focus or think straight.
Gosh.
And then on top of that, you've got anxiety
Right.
spiraling out of control,
Right.
waves of depression hitting you out of nowhere,
Wow.
and then mood swings, like so extreme. It's like you're on a roller coaster,
Oh my gosh.
and those are just like the tip of the iceberg.
You know, one of the things that really stuck out to me in this research was
Yeah.
this mention of something called a distorted sense of reality
Right.
during codeine withdrawal.
Yeah.
That sounds terrifying. Is that like a common experience?
It's definitely less talked about,
Right.
but it highlights just how deeply codeine can impact the brain.
Yeah.
For some people, withdrawal can involve like visual or auditory hallucinations,
Yeah. Wow.
paranoia, or just this general feeling of being detached from reality,
Right.
which, as you can imagine, can be incredibly distressing.
That does sound incredibly scary.
Yeah.
So how long does this withdrawal roller coaster typically last?
That's the tricky part because it really varies from person to person.
Okay.
Factors like how long and how much codeine someone was using,
Right.
their individual metabolism,
Right.
overall health,
Right.
even if they struggled with other addictions, all come into play.
Wow.
But generally speaking, the withdrawal symptoms usually start, within a few hours of that last dose of codeine,
Okay.
and then they intensify over the next few days, peaking around day 3 or 4.
Okay.
Good news is, the worst of the physical symptoms, those usually start to ease up within a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the catch. The emotional and psychological symptoms,
Right.
like that anxiety, depression, those intense cravings,
Yeah.
those can linger for weeks, sometimes even months for some people.
So just when you think you're in the clear, then
Yeah.
the mental and emotional battle kind of continues.
Exactly. And there's another really crucial point this research highlights
Okay.
that people often misunderstand.
Mm.
Even taking a small dose of codeine
Yeah.
after withdrawal starts can completely reset the clock,
Oh, wow.
leading to a longer and potentially even more severe withdrawal experience.
So you're basically right back to square one, even with a small slip up.
Pretty much.
That just underscores, I think,
Yeah.
how critical it is to have the right support
Definitely.
during recovery.
Absolutely. That's why, medically supervised detox can be such a game changer.
Right.
It's not just about getting through those initial really agonizing days
Mhm.
of physical withdrawal, but providing those tools and support
Right.
to navigate those longer term challenges
Right.
and ultimately reduce that risk of relapse.
Hearing about how intense that withdrawal process can be, I'm
Yeah.
really glad this research also dives into recovery. Okay, that was rough,
Right.
but there's
There's hope.
there's hope. Exactly.
Yeah.
There are ways to find lasting freedom from this. So,
Absolutely.
huh?
There are actually really effective treatments out there
Okay.
that can make a world of difference.
Okay.
Our research highlights a couple of the different medical interventions that can be really, really helpful
Okay.
for people who are, looking to break free from codeine.
So one that comes up a lot is medication-assisted therapy, or MAT.
Yeah.
And that sounds a little counterintuitive to me.
Oh.
Using medication to address the effects of medication.
Right. Right.
So can you break down how that works?
Absolutely. It's a really common question.
Right.
And, I think understanding the mechanism behind it
Yeah.
can really click for people. So
Okay.
essentially, these medications work by interacting with those same endorphin receptors in the brain that codeine targets,
Okay.
but in a more controlled
Right.
and less disruptive way.
So it's these medications are kind of
Yeah.
stepping in to help the brain find some balance again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One example is buprenorphine.
Okay.
Now, buprenorphine is what's called a partial opioid agonist.
Okay.
Think of it like a substitute teacher
Okay.
stepping in for the regular endorphin teacher.
Gotcha.
So buprenorphine binds to those receptors,
Okay.
eases withdrawal symptoms, reduces cravings,
Right.
but it doesn't create that same intense high
Right.
that, codeine does.
And then there's methadone,
Right.
which I know is another medication used in methadone.
Yeah.
Is it similar to buprenorphine?
They both work by, interacting with those opioid receptors.
Okay.
But methadone is what's called a full opioid agonist.
Okay.
So it activates the receptors more completely.
Okay.
It's incredibly effective at managing those withdrawal symptoms, especially for people who've had a really tough time with codeine dependence.
Right.
But it also can be more likely to lead to dependence itself.
Okay.
So that's why it tends to be reserved for more severe cases.
Right.
And it's, carefully monitored.
Gotcha. So both buprenorphine and methadone are about
Yeah.
helping people kind of get through those
Right.
initial stages of withdrawal.
Yeah.
But then there's naltrexone,
Right.
which works in a totally different way. Right?
Yes, right. Naltrexone is really interesting
Okay.
because it's an opioid antagonist.
Okay.
Imagine it as a shield
Okay.
that blocks those opioid receptors in the brain.
Wow.
So like putting up a big do not enter sign for the codeine.
Gotcha.
Not only does it prevent codeine from like latching on and having those pleasurable effects,
Right.
but it also significantly reduces cravings even after someone's gone through detox.
So if I'm understanding this correctly,
Yeah.
while methadone and buprenorphine are more about sort of helping people get through that initial,
Yeah.
like, really tough withdrawal period,
Right.
naltrexone is more about preventing relapse
Yes.
down the road.
Exactly.
Right.
Each medication has its place.
Right.
And its own advantages depending on, the individual and where they are in their recovery.
Right.
But it's important to remember that medication is often just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
The research really emphasizes that for lasting recovery, you need that multi-pronged approach.
Right.
Therapy is crucial to
Okay.
help people understand those root causes of their dependence and, develop healthier coping mechanisms.
Yeah. So to loop back to the beginning of our deep dive today,
Yeah.
it's clear that,
Yeah.
we can't let codeine's common presence,
Right.
fool us. It might
Yeah.
seem like a milder opioid,
Right.
but the reality is it can have a really, really powerful impact
Yeah.
on the brain and the body.
Powerful stuff.
From that sneaky way it mimics our natural processes
Right.
to those potentially debilitating withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah,
There's a lot more to codeine than meets the eye.
for sure.
Definitely. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
we've reached the end of our deep dive into the hidden dangers of codeine.
Right.
If you're dealing with codeine dependence, please remember you're not alone.
Absolutely.
There's help available. Don't hesitate to reach out to a healthcare professional
Yeah.
to find the support and resources that are right for you.